Hey YouTube, I'm here for part 2 of the Konmari moving series, and in the last episode of this series I talked a little bit about packing and moving with a Konmari framework. You can check out that last video if you haven't already. In this part, I'm going to talk about setting up an apartment from scratch when you practice Konmari. As is often the case, I'll be looking over here at my notes, so I don't forget all the things I have to say, because this is probably going to be a slightly longer video, maybe, so we'll see. So when I first came out here, before I'd actually move into my apartment, I was staying with my partners for a couple weeks, and took the opportunity to kind of revisit and get back to the base of the Konmari method, which is kind of easy to forget that one of the things Marie Kondo talks about is that you need to have a purpose for doing Konmari, otherwise it won't stick. So you need to have something in your mind, visualizing what your life will look like once you tidy. And I had done that when I first did the Konmari method, but I wanted to revisit that purpose and imagine what my ideal life would look like and how that would relate to my home. And I went back and reread a bunch of bits of her book and the second book as well. So this was one of the things that I remembered to do. When I tried to picture what that ideal life would look like in an ideal space, some of the things that I thought about, of course, that the space sparks joy. That's pretty fundamental to Konmari. That the space feels like it's mine, that it feels me, that I can find things when I need them. I want to not be ashamed or embarrassed by mess. I want to be able to, one thing that's key is that I wanted to be able to create separate sort of zones for different things, parts of my life, different areas of my life. I work from home, not just during COVID, but all the time. And so one of the things that was a challenge in my previous apartment is that I pretty much had my whole life in my bedroom and bathroom. I shared the common areas with roommates, and so I would be in the kitchen sometimes, but I would kind of minimize my time there. So having all my own space, I think the ideal for me is being able to separate zones of my life, to be able to do things that I want to do more, to be able to spend kind of what I think of as mindful time, or time away from screens, or just time being with myself where my body can also be comfortable. So I think sometimes it's easy to be like, oh, this is really nice, but my back hurts sitting outside, or whatever it is. And then being able to engage in regular movement practice and in self-care, without worrying about having to pick stuff up or having to change my space in order to be able to do those things. So the situation that I find myself in, this specific apartment that you see sort of behind you, is pretty nice. It's, I think, over 800 square feet. It's definitely the biggest apartment I've had on my own. It's a one bedroom, one bathroom apartment, but it does have plenty of space. It has a balcony, so that's awesome. There are some sort of awkward spaces, so when I was planning and thinking about how I'd set my apartment up, I actually pulled up the floor plan and measurements and realized there's a lot of weird little, I don't know if you can see it, but through that kind of open door type thing is where the bedroom and bathroom are, and there's kind of this weird little square hallway thing that you can't really put anything there. There's a lot of stuff like that, bits of wall like that between doors that aren't really wide enough to put something. But at the same time, there's a lot of openness. I have a walk-in closet, which is great, in my bedroom. I know Marie Kondo emphasizes how great that is if you have a walk-in closet. At the same time, because we are going through COVID-19 right now, my budget is a little smaller, particularly for what might be really ideal if I really wanted to splurge and make everything perfect. quite doing that because of COVID-19 and financial uncertainty. By the way, let me know in the comments if you would like to see a video specifically about Konmari and COVID-19 intersecting, because I thought about doing that. I also, I've learned some things from my last experience, so I mentioned a couple already. For example, the closet that I had in my previous home worked pretty well, and it is a walk-in closet as well. But I noticed that I didn't tend to take out my stationery or journaling supplies very much. Maybe in part that is because I did technically have those in two places, some in the closet and some out, which Marie Kondo does not recommend. But also I think I just didn't always go into the drawers as neatly labeled as they were. I didn't having my workspace be right near my bed was really not ideal. I had my desk in my bedroom. It was right at the foot of my bed, and so that's not the best. There was also a lot of bath stuff or even kitchen stuff would end up in the backs of shelves or drawers where it would get ignored. I didn't do too terribly once I had done the KonMari method, and I had been trying not to acquire a bunch of stuff, but you still stuff found its way to the back. I really liked having labeled things, and this is kind of branching away from KonMari. She likes to not have text. I had this big plastic sorter. You can find it if you look for a hardware organizer or a garage organizer, because it's for things like screws and nails. It has these little plastic drawers, and I labeled all of those with my label maker, and I really liked it. That if you were looking for something really random and miscellaneous, the kind of junk drawer items, I had them all in there, so I could be oh, I need stamps, I need my passport, I need a travel charger, and that was really great. But I didn't go in there all the time, and there were definitely, I would say, about half to 60% of the drawers in there I never opened, whereas the ones I did open, it was useful. So I didn't really need all that stuff. I did find that it was really handy to have. I had a little pottery bowl that was for my wallet, keys, spare credit cards. That was really helpful. Having a place for that stuff. I never lost those things again. I mean, maybe very occasionally I'd leave them in a pants pocket, but pretty much didn't. On the other hand, I did tend to just dump things on the floor. Other than those things, I tended to just dump things on the floor. And I know Marie Kondo says it's okay, if you're really tired and you leave stuff, what's important is it has a home to go back to, but things would just live on the floor for long enough that it meant I wasn't doing movement, I wasn't using that little bit of space I had at the foot of my bed that was just enough for a little bit of a movement practice. I would never do it because there was always stuff in that space. So that was a problem. I wanted to figure out how I could make my tea collection. I love tea, but how could I make my tea collection spark more joy and less panic? Because I would always just have not be able to find what I was looking for, have too much of the tea I didn't want, not enough tea of the tea I did want. Tea would fall on my head when I opened the cabinet. It just was not good. And again, when we're talking about storing stuff in the back, I wanted to have a kitchen situation where everything is towards the front of where it lives, even if that means space is unused, because storing food really deep and we had these basically for a pantry, a big cabinet that went all the way back, and so you would just never use the stuff back there. I also, some things I noticed in my old space is I didn't have photos really anywhere, and I had a lot of art, but not really any art that was relevant to my spiritual practice. I have one tarot related thing and one moon phase clock, but otherwise such a big part of my life was not really represented in the art on my walls. And I learned that I really didn't like having kind of a cluttered feel to the art. So my room was very curated in specific things and specific colors and how they're arranged. Whereas our living space, which no shade to my roommates, it looked really cool, but it's just all sorts of fan art everywhere, and it's really scattered. And there was kind of a theme to certain walls, but there's not a lot of white space. And so one thing I learned is that I do actually like that empty space, and it's important to me. Even if it means you have to kind of cycle the art around. So that's what I took away from my previous space. And so in setting up the new space, as I mentioned, like I did some rereading, some of the things that I was reminded of that you might have forgotten if it's been a while since you did Konmari, or just if you're not familiar with it, some of the things that I took away about what to do after you've done the big tidy, like done the go through everything and get rid of stuff, because that was the big part of the book I remembered, but I wanted to go back and get some takeaways for like how do you set up. So some of them are store things by their category, so things that are similar go together. Store things vertically or standing up whenever possible, so that's where the folding comes from, where all the clothes are folded like files. I did that, but I'd forgotten that was the recommendation for other things. So store things vertically, give things breathing room, so don't have it 100% full, have it like 80 to 90% full. Try to keep your counters clear. Now I don't do the thing where you put your sponge and your dish soap away, that's too much for me, but I do think having a generally clear counter is good. Start with the built-in storage before you buy storage items. So I remembered that she wasn't a big fan of like the container store. What I had forgotten was starting with the storage that already exists and then moving on. And then being able to see everything. The more you can see it, the less likely you are to buy 9 million of them or forget to use things. And that was a big one for me. It was a good reminder that like I don't need to buy a bunch of storage stuff. I have way more space than I really need for storage already, even built in, so to take advantage of that. I was initially, when I started thinking about how I was going to set up my space, I was looking first at the items that I would need to store, but I started shifting my thinking more to categories. So to facilitate that, I listed out everything that I already own in a spreadsheet, and because I already had, I think I mentioned I had a spreadsheet for packing, so of course I had a spreadsheet. But if I listed everything that I owned in kind of categories, then I could start to put things together and then draft where I wanted to put them. So thinking that way about what are all the things in the clothes category, for example, not just clothes, but like bags and shoes, helped me to think about where I could store them together, ideally, with some exceptions. So for one, a good example is I had been planning to buy under bed drawers, but I realized that, like, I was thinking that was like, I don't know, more grown up or more sophisticated than having a bunch of plastic drawers in the closet, which is what I did before. But I thought about it and I was like, no, if I want to keep the clothes that you fold near the clothes that you hang, the clothes should be in the walk-in closet. What I found as an alternative is still rolling drawers. It's still like a cart, but it's kind of like a wicker look, and then a canvasy like cloth side. So with a wood top, so it looks nicer than the plastic ones. It goes better in the closet with the look of the walls, but it is still, the basic idea is the same. It's still a couple of rolling drawer sets that are in the closet. I did find that I couldn't use all of the built-in space to the maximum. So for example, I have a linen closet and it has a ton of empty shelves. Which would be great, but you only want to store things in the bathroom that are moisture tolerant, and there aren't that many things like that. Again, I could store clothes in there and maybe get dressed in the bathroom, and that kind of makes sense after you shower, but then my hanging things would be somewhere else, so it didn't make sense. I kind of went with what Marie Kondo says, which is that it's less about where it is or like the flow or the path than it is having everything in the same place. It's not a huge deal to walk from my bathroom to my bedroom to get dressed, or to pull things out of the closet and bring them into the bathroom. So that linen closet is basically empty. I also decided, for example, that I wanted to keep my tarot cards, my journaling stuff, and a kind of altar, which is not something I've had before, but put all those together in, I think Marie Kondo calls it a kind of power space. She suggests that everybody have a space that's really theirs in their home, and even though my whole home is mine now, I still like the idea of having a space that is dedicated to that. So that was one thing I'll show you when we do, in the next video in the series, we'll do an apartment tour, and I will show you where that is. But those are just some examples. Like I said, the next thing that I will show is how I applied all these ideas. So I will do an empty apartment tour, which I've already filmed when I first moved in, so you can see what the space looks like, and then I will show you how I decided to put things in the space, some of the choices that I made about where things go, and how I applied Marie Kondo's methods to that. That might be a while though. I don't know exactly when I'll film it because I don't have every single piece of furniture yet, and I don't have all my stuff either, although close to it. So I may film that. May go ahead and film that. I may at least wait till I'm pretty soon gonna have, I think, a love seat, a tarot, a space for my tarot and journaling stuff, and computer monitor, and those are a few of the things that'll like finish off the space, so I may wait until that to film this. But let me know if you want to hear about how the whole COVID-19 thing fits into all of this, how you do Konmari, which is a method where you're not supposed to keep a bunch of stuff on hand during a time where you have to keep a lot of things on hand. I'd be happy to do that. But otherwise, we'll see you in the next part of this series, and don't forget to subscribe so that you will get a notification.